Hello there, cat people. Dan the Catman and my editing assistant, Mona, are here with a quick editing note and update. The original episode 44 had to be delayed and moved back into the schedule because of a bunch of editing issues I've encountered with the episode, as in I stink at editing. So we had already in the can, or in the cloud, as it were, a wonderful episode with our first return guest, Tate Simmons, with an update on the fight for Toast and Spirit. So I was able to move that into the slot for episode 44. So the original episode 44, featuring Jerry Torrey of Grey Gardens fame, will be pushed back into May when I have a chance to fix some editing issues that have come up with the episode. But not to worry, you'll hear that wonderful episode where Michelle and I interviewed the wonderful Jerry Torrey very, very soon. Probably in May, assuming I can get the editing done. Meanwhile, we have the wonderful, gracious, kind, amazing Tate Simmons, our first return guest, to give us an update on the fight for Toast and Spirits. And again, as I mentioned in the episode and in the description of the episode, if you haven't listened to episode 25 with Tate Simmons' first appearance, I absolutely encourage, implore, almost insist that you pause this episode right now, go back, listen to episode 25 in its entirety, and then come back and listen to this episode 44, where Tate joins us for an update. Because you really, really need to hear the entire story and get all the facts before you can proceed with Tate's update in episode 44. And as always, we'd love to hear from you. If you run a rescue, if you do anything at all to better the lives of shelter cats, even if you have adopted what you think is the world's greatest shelter cat, and I'm sure it is, we want to hear from you. So just find us on all social media. Just search Shelter Cats or Shelter Cats Podcast. The website is sheltercatspodcast.com or tylerthecat.com. You can email me, Dan at sheltercatspodcast.com. You can email Michelle at sheltercatspodcast.com. You'll be able to find us, not to worry, or go into the episode description, and I have my little link tree thing there. I like link tree. So don't be shy. We want to hear from you. We'd love to have you on as a guest in a future episode. And without further ado, here is Michelle and I with our first return guest, Tate Simmons. Enjoy, and thank you so much. Meow. Hello, Michelle. How are you?
Hello, Dan. I'm doing all right. How are you?
And welcome to episode 48 of the Shelter Cats Podcast.
I'm excited. It's another one. Another one in the can.
Another one in the can. Hold on one moment. I am going to invite our first repeat guest.
Yes, I'm excited to meet her.
So this is our first return guest. Her name is Tate Simmons, and she will be joining us any moment. I'm all choked up. I'm all choked up by the excitement of having Tate on. And there she is. Hello, Tate. How are you?
Hi, Dan. How are you?
You're on with Michelle and I, where we have two people now hosting.
Hey, hi, Michelle. Nice to meet
Hi,
you.
Tate. Yeah, it's so nice to meet you.
Yes. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm really excited to be back.
So you're our first repeat guest, and the fact that you are our most listened to episode so far has only a little bit to do with that. So welcome back.
Amazing. Thank you.
I'm not going to ask you to repeat the story of Toast and Spirit. I'm just going to implore people to stop now, go listen to episode 25, because Tate, you were so eloquent and heartfelt and everything about the Toast and Spirit story. So I wouldn't dare ask you to repeat that, because it was just, I wouldn't want you to relive that again. I'm sure you've told the story a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. More times than I can count.
But it's been about 6 months since you and I have had that chat. So
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of keep this keep the story alive, and B, have, obviously Michelle's here. She's joined the show. She asks things that don't occur to me. But I also wanted to get kind of a follow up to see what's happened in the 6 months since when we last spoke. You spoke at a town board meeting, and I think you just spoke at another town board meeting.
Yeah.
And even I've had a run in with the town of Hempstead shelter, which I'll get to in a bit. But I wanted to see what's happened since then. Has there been any big changes, any big movements? So can you bring us up to date?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a journey, like you said, like we spoke 6 months ago. So you'd think that would be enough time where I could report back and say there's been like significant change in that, or like the steps have been made clear that, the shelter is taking. But to kind of bring you up to speed. So yeah, last time we spoke, I had kind of left off with, that we would touch base, hopefully with better news and you know, with I think more of a clear path of what the shelter is doing. Um, Pretty briefly after we spoke, I actually attended the town of Hempstead, the town's board meeting, which basically goes over how the town of Hempstead is going to budget their money. So it was super interesting because within that meeting, they go over like X amount of dollars is going to go towards parks and recreation, or X amount of dollars goes to, marinas, or, whatever it may be. So obviously, I went to that meeting to really understand the animal shelter and what the budget looked like. So prior to that meeting, I did a lot of due diligence, did my homework. I went through the actual budget book, which was public, so you could take the budget sheets and take a look before you go to the actual meeting to, just have a good idea of like what numbers we're talking about. Did the shelter, get cuts for the 2024 year? Did they have added money on? What does it look like? So after looking at the budget prior to the meeting, crazy enough, the shelter's budget was increased
Oh,
to, yeah, more than $6 million. So
wow.
that was really interesting to me because I think that there would be a lot of, with increase in funding comes increase in, output. And to me, that would be, better staffing, more equipped, maybe paying staff more money or getting an on-site vet or whatever it may be. So it's been quite interesting because when I looked at that budget, I kind of looked through the line items of like, what does everything mean? So marketing money, for example, like how they should spend money marketing the pets that are adoptable was quite low. It was about $10,000 for the year, which if you look at it, over $6 million shelter, only $10,000 a year for marketing. And I work in marketing, so I know what's enough money to make things move and to make, a difference. And for me, that would be digital marketing, right? They find dogs, they should put ads up on, certain Facebook communities or whatever it may be. But that wasn't enough money in my eyes. So I flagged that. And then I also flagged, the fact that there was certain portions of the budget that were mapped out for vets. However, they don't have an on-site vet full time. And that's been the issue. And I believe last time we spoke, I had talked about obviously Central Veterinary Associates in Valley Stream.
Yes.
And the one good news is that we've confirmed that the contract has been cut with them.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so that was really big news for us. So when I heard that, I was highly appreciative because that was a huge issue, right? That vet's office is horrible. If you look at the reviews, you talk to people, they'll tell you how bad it is. So when I looked at this budget, I was hoping to see a little bit more funding for on-site vets, but I figure, what they had we'll just take. So I walked out of that meeting and it kind of brought us into the holidays. So I figured, I looked at they had more money. I was excited because I felt like, all right, now looking at the staff at the shelter, the acting director who's currently there, they'll, implement change. They're gonna, bring in a person to run Lost and Found, do the social media posts, like just people that would really help create more of a stable environment and reunite lost pets. So, kind of jumping forward, the meetings kind of came to a halt throughout the holidays. And then jumping into January, I reconnected with a few people that I've been working with on the sidelines, not associated with the board, but just in the rescue community. And they had let me know, hey Tate, there's not much change besides that contract being cut. And now we have to remember when I brought up the issue with what happened to Spirit and Toast, it led back to Central Vet, obviously, but the issue mainly there was that, you know, what else did they find? They didn't technically cut that contract just because that kid, killed my cat.
Right.
They did it because they obviously found a lot of blood on paperwork, and they probably saw a significant amount of money. When we foiled for, what we were paying, us being taxpayers were paying and the town paying to the vet, it was like over $30,000 a month some months. So they probably found so many animals that were euthanized with just no reasoning behind it other than the fact that they were old or lost or who knows, the shelter didn't have room, whatever it may be. So for me, just cutting that contract was great, but there was also a whole nother half of the problem, right? And that's that other 50% of like my cat was murdered because there was no lost and found process. And we can't ignore that. Like that has been half the issue, right? Central Vet screwed up and then the town screwed up, right? They didn't even follow their own steps.
Right.
So it became pretty frustrating immediately in January when I heard that because I'd given the town a few months to really just like, not have me in their ear at these meetings. They heard what I had to say. I asked them for, a designated lost and found person. I asked them, to meet with them. I wanted to talk about this and they never contacted me. Now, after my last meeting before the holidays, Don Clavin, the town supervisor, actually did step off the podium at the end and come speak to me, and which was highly appreciated. He told me in front of my family, we hear you, you're doing great work, like we're working with you, it's not falling on deaf ears.
That's
But
good.
then, yeah, so I really did appreciate that, right? Because it felt like at points I was just talking to a board of robots, like no one was responding to me. It made me very upset. So when he stepped down, it was kind of a personal element that made me feel like, okay, I'm being heard, I'm not wasting time. But now coming into the new year, I did some interesting research and I brought this up in the board meeting that I spoke at last week. Since the day Spirit was euthanized, up until last Tuesday, the town has posted 0 found cats. 0.
Oh my
Not
God.
1. Not even 1. Like, I went through it twice because I really wanted to make sure I was right. Not even 1.
Yeah,
The most
that's not
frustrating thing
right.
Yeah, and the most frustrating thing for me is that I know at least 2 that fell through that weren't posted. So, imagine how many other people's fur babies that they think crawled off and died or whatever ended up in that shelter and just kinda disappeared, you know? There was no trace. So I brought that up in the board meeting and it didn't really get much commentary from anyone on the board. Um, I did speak about how frustrated I was. I was frustrated about the acting town director at the shelter. It's frustrating, and I'm not going to mention her name on here for privacy. But what's most frustrating for me is this woman is the acting director at the shelter. She is the one who a lot of times the board leans into. They ask, "How's things going there? What do we need to change?" All this. She hadn't responded to me. She hadn't reached out to me. She's been at these meetings. She just doesn't even acknowledge that I'm there. And in my eyes, she runs that shelter poorly. And looking at what happened to my cats and so many other issues that have come about, even with just the dogs there, and I know this podcast is about cats, but I'll tap into kind of what's going on with the dogs right now just to show the overall nightmare that's going on. The town, and I urge everyone to really look online and try to read and gather information from trustful sources, but the town has been caught sending dogs to out of state either shelters or quote unquote rescues
What?
that have been that have been at that shelter for too long. Funny enough, one of the dogs, Wally, that was just shipped to Florida, was a dog that I was actually interested in adopting 2 years ago, but I found out he wasn't good with cats, so I couldn't adopt him, or I think he wasn't good with kids, one or the other. They've shipped these dogs to a guy in Florida who, quote unquote, has a rescue, which I found is not 501c approved, does not follow guidelines, very random person. He came down, the shelter paid him approximately $3,000 a head to take these dogs to safety, right? In Florida, which we all know Florida is not a safe state for animals.
Right.
It's just not. You look at those shelters, especially Miami-Dade, I cry every time when I see these animals on the youth list. They have paid this man to take these dogs. There were photos that leaked with these dogs, and I kid you not, Dan, I'm going to text this to you after this podcast so you see it. The dog Wally with 3 collars on. The first collar was a shock collar,
Oh,
so
God.
high up on his head it was up into his ears.
Oh, come on.
The second was a leash with the collar attached, and the third was a collar underneath that. The
Jesus.
dog looked like it was traumatized. Now, I found out that they paid this man to take the dogs. He came in a sketchy van, picked them up, and went back to Florida. Now, what type of under the table deal was done for some man to cross over Georgia, Florida, and all these other states where animals are being dumped, right? Physically dumped in garbage bags on the side of the road. He came all the way to New York to pick up these dogs. Now, apparently, they're planning on taking 22 more dogs across to another state, to another rescue. They found out that this man in Florida he's a felon. They found out that
Oh my
he
God.
almost lost his dogs because they got out and almost killed a child. He has a whole record. He is not a clean-cut person. And I actually brought this up at the board meeting, and a lot of other people, amazingly enough, were there speaking on the same thing about the dogs. But to me, moral of the story, and like I said, I really highly recommend everyone to look into what they're doing with these dogs. We are shipping dogs across states because we're not housing them at the shelter anymore because it's quote unquote not fair. We don't even know what's going on. I found out that they didn't even do a check to see if this guy's property in Florida. So going back to kind of the overarching messaging and issue here, that acting director, that is her job to make sure that everything is aligned, that the animals are being taken care of, that if we are sending an animal to another state, that we at least send someone on a plane to go look at the housing. And someone flagged that at the meeting, and the board said, well, we weren't going to pay for someone to go across to Florida. You're not going to pay $400, $500 a ticket to go check to make sure it's okay, but you're going to pay $3,000 a dog for this guy to take them. What's wrong with that? There's something bizarre.
Why were these dogs being sent? Because is there overcrowding? Are these
Apparently they were there
unadoptable
for two.
dogs?
Apparently they were deemed they were longtime residents that hadn't been adopted. And I don't know the full story because I just heard about it on Tuesday for the first time and it made me sick to my stomach. So, I have to find more details on that. But the dog Wally was there for 5 years. And I think, we can look at what's going on there, right? From the lost and found to what happened to my cat to shipping out the dogs. There is a serious issue with that shelter right now, and it's that they don't know how to handle the animals. They don't know how to staff their, staffing properly. They still don't have a vet on site, full time to watch these animals. They keep telling us we're having a hard time finding a vet. Well, vets are getting a lot of money these days. And you know what? For a $6 million shelter, over $6 million shelter, they need to splurge on that. $4.5 million of that budget was going to salaries and this and that. Nothing was crazy direct to the animals. So it's a huge issue, and the fact that the town and the board is letting them this director at the shelter and the staffing there just kind of run this free for all, it's disgusting. And still to this day, I really can't comprehend why we won't just do what's right for the animals here. And you look at they're shipping these dogs. I can only imagine where the cats go, because the cats seem to be the short end of the stick here always. But who knows where they send cats? These quote unquote sanctuaries, right? The random places in America that they'll send cats to saying it's haven. And then years later you find them on the news like, they found dead cats in a freezer or sending to a dog fighting ring. Like,
Right.
who knows what's truly going on there? And, to me, like I'm taking responsibility to just question everything that they're doing. And it's funny because the dog people and the cat people are reuniting on this because like they know there's so many injustices going on, but why not just up the marketing and try to find proper adoptions, right? Or have more, try to find, some sort of team effort to get more people in that shelter to adopt. Maybe try to, work with the pit bulls, get an established dog trainer there. They've had such a hard time with dog trainers there. Maybe these dogs aren't adoptable. Maybe they're just deeming them not good with cats, but you know what? Maybe they are. Maybe they haven't really tested them with it or worked through it. They're just being stamped not good with kids, not good with dogs. Then they're, of course, stuck there for 5 years.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's so frustrating.
It's kind of a rhetorical question. I don't really expect an answer, but it baffles my mind how people can get involved in that type of industry. Like, how do you become someone who is a caregiver, a caretaker of animals if you just don't give a shit about the animals? How do you take on that job? You take on that responsibility. You have to have some level of care to
Right,
do that job. Like
Well,
it's
right,
if 4.5 million of the $6 million budget is going towards salaries and not anything to do with the animals, that was the two things that stuck out. We like dogs on this show, by the way.
Yes,
The two things that this isn't like the anti-dog podcast. We love dogs, so that's cool. My landlord has a pit bull that my Sophie has scared. That the pit bull is intimidated by my cat. But the two things that stuck out was $10,000 goes towards finding the pets, the dogs and cats homes, and that they're shipping dogs and presumably cats out of state lines to, to blank and parolees in real life or something like that. Those are the two things that stuck out of my mind.
See, I don't have a problem specifically that the guy was a felon. I don't, but it would depend on what his crime was. If he did his crime, he did his time. He deserves some redemption. Okay, so that's just like a general thing about that.
Right.
But if he has, some other crime that's related to animals or related to fraud or related to inhumane acts of one sort or another, that's a bit different. If he was in for stealing cars, okay, he stole a car, he went to jail, he did his time. Now he has a right to, have another life. But
Right.
he should at least just be like you said, just send somebody down there to inspect the place. I mean, because you have no idea what's going on, and the fact that he's got the one dog that you saw picked what was the dog's name?
Wally.
Wally.
With a shock collar on it, and just the other are we doing that? Is that even legal?
That they didn't even do any due diligence or background check on this person is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
That was the saddest thing for me. Like, I saw this picture, and from, people talked to me about this at the meeting, like after we all finished speaking, and it's really upsetting because they don't use shock collars in the shelter for training purposes, but as soon as this guy came, the first thing he did was strap a shock collar on them. So it's like this poor dog has been there for 5 years, traumatized,
Right.
and now they think he's better off going to this random man. And I totally agree with the felony comment too, because like you watch Pit Bulls and Parolees, like that's one of my favorite shows. Like
Yeah,
I love seeing
absolutely.
people that have like turned their life around, and like I honestly think that we should get some sort of dog training like implemented into prisons and like try to make the situation better for both parties.
Right.
But from what I've heard, this guy has had horrible like animal training experiences, and
Oh,
has been like under watch, and there's been issues,
yeah.
and I look at this photo, and it kind of makes me feel like, why have so many collars on, and why have, well, send Dan, I'm going to send you the photo right now. You'll see, the collar is so high, and I used to work with horses, so I kind of know the anatomy of like the animal body pretty well, horses and dogs. This collar, the fact that it's a shock collar, really, it just, it's too high on its head. It's like, I can't imagine how painful. The dog can't move its head down because of how high up it is.
Ugh.
I just sent it to you so you can see it, but like, they didn't, you need to do it. First of all,
Oh my God.
you're gonna send this dog over to someone who's picking him up in a sketchy van and coming do you know how many issues there are dogs just being murdered in Georgia every day. I mean, that state is so horrible for animals, and Florida itself, it has some of the lowest animal safety laws in the country. So why are we going to send our dogs there for safety? Why can't we do a better job here at this over $6 million shelter and get them adopted out? And if we can't get them adopted out and they're sitting there for so many years, we're doing something wrong. And like I said, like my point with the cats is like, we don't know what's going on with the cats. The dogs seem to be always like the main kind of like focus and story on their Facebook page. They'll post cats once in a while, but like they don't post anything like found or this or that. Like it's their Facebook page just looks like a big PR stunt to me. And that's disturbing.
I so how often do they have these board meetings?
It really depends. Honestly, I think they're like every 2 weeks, or it's not as frequent as every week. I think they're like every 2 weeks. It depends, but if you go on the Town of Hempstead website, on the bottom you can click on like the dates. I know they have some at 7 p.m. and they have some at 10:30 in the morning, and the 10:30 in the morning is honestly done on purpose, in my opinion, because not everyone can take off work, you know, I even
Right.
just being there last Tuesday, I mean, I worked a 15-hour day and got on the train and just made it by minutes, and people were texting me like, "Tate, they're trying to hurry this meeting up, like, run, come as quick as you can,"
Right.
and I vocalized like, "Hey, we still have another part of our deal that we never worked out, like, great you cut the ties, that was the easiest thing you could do because it came down to money, but what about the actual injustice that happened here? There's no lost and found program." And I proposed something called the Spirit Safety Act, and it's funny that my cat's name was Spirit because I think it really fits here. But the Spirit Safety Act is a set of protocols that I want implemented at the shelter that employees, the town supervisor, the town of Hempstead Animal Shelter director, everyone has to follow. And that's from the immediate step of intake all the way up through the process of, community outreach, and then, putting up hold date and whatever that may be, but there has to be a protocol step by step that they follow. That to me, they have it, but apparently they don't follow it, and no one's been following it. So I sent an email out to the town board, just readdressing what I spoke about on Tuesday. I have yet to hear back. I don't get responses. When you go to these meetings, you only have 3 minutes. And to me, how can I put this whole problem into 3 minutes? It's you literally speak up until the last second. It's
Oh my
impossible. And then they
God.
turn off your mic. So it's really beyond
Jeez.
frustrating that no one will speak to me. And they come off that board, the board, where the chairs are, and they just run to the side. It's like that one time Don Clavin came down, I appreciated it, but come on, like I'm not, it's the woman next to me said, "Oh, that was huge. That was amazing." And I'm like, "Yeah, it was, but that doesn't fix the point that this is gonna be my first Christmas in 18 years without my cat, and like this doesn't help the fact that I have to live and think about like my cat's last moments being so sad and like traumatizing, and then also to look at what happened to Toast. Like he went into that town truck, in that animal control unit fine and came out totally lethargic and had to be put down. Like I can't, I get
Yeah.
goosebumps because it's like that to me, that's my family, Spirit was my family, and I don't have any sympathy for the board. I get they have other issues they're trying to take care of, but honestly, I've been on them since day one of when this happened. And my family and I talk about it all the time. People keep saying to us, the only way you're gonna get this to change is if you bring it to a lawsuit. And honestly, it's going to have to come to that if they won't speak to us because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, it
What
honestly,
else can I do?
you might have to go that route. And then, I mean, even if there's, and then, I mean, I guess the upside, if you will, of doing a lawsuit is there will probably be a proper investigation. And,
Yeah,
all of the questions that you present about, well, how did all of this happen in the first place? Where are the other holes? Where are the other problems? In theory, those would come to light. You would hope
yeah,
anyway, through that process. So
yeah,
unfortunately, I mean, who wants to go through all that? But
You've certainly tried for months to get through to them, to get a simple meeting. I mean, you tag them in every post. You've been as
yeah,
eloquent as possible. And it sounds like at these meetings, you're not the only one that brings up concerns and has,
yeah.
3-minute presidential debate rebuttal type way to speak. So
Right.
there are dog people that are bringing up issues as well. So you're not the only one that voices concerns, and they put their hands over their ears, and as soon as it's done, they bolt.
Right.
So it sounds like you've certainly tried to get through to them. I'm no lawyer, but it sounds like, yeah, that's the only way to really get through to them, is
Yeah.
to is that might be the only thing they listen to.
Right. Yeah.
And it's it's unfortunate, it's costly, it's whatever, but if that's what gets them to be like, oh crap, she's serious.
Right.
Yeah, I would I you know I'll say it again, the conviction that you show, the drive that 6 months later, um it's just very frustrating that they're not that this just goes on, and that they just don't listen. What are they doing in there? What are they doing day to day when these
Yeah.
animals are suffering? Is it just a paycheck to them, and they go home and go home to a
Yeah.
house without pets and don't have the love of an animal, so they don't get it? What are they doing in this shelter? I get it's Long Island, and Long Island is very, can stink of corruption.
Yeah.
I say that as I was raised in Brooklyn. Um,
Right.
I'm a
Right.
New Yorker, so I could say stuff like that. But I just like, what are they
Yeah.
doing in there? What are they doing? $10,000 goes towards finding these pets homes. I
Yeah.
in Thanksgiving, a stray. The Penelope story, because I reached out to you,
Yeah.
and she ended up there. Had I not been calling every hour on the hour, the staff person who I thought was a friend, oh, I'm gonna keep after this. I never heard from her.
Yeah.
By the grace of God, she went to Wantagh Vet, and they took care of her. And they said, "Oh, you could take her. She's fine."
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
happened? What happened to her? I don't know. Um,
Right.
I think she had a chicken bone in her mouth, but she's okay. You can take her home.
Right.
You know what I
It's
mean?
insane. And you were on it. Like you knew to keep checking. Like not everyone knows that.
Had it not been
Even
for you, had it not been for
yeah.
you, for meeting you and your story, absolutely. I,
Yeah.
I cringe at the thought of what would happen. And now she lives under my bed now. She's
Yeah.
jittery, but at least she's safe and she's home. And
Yeah.
that's what should have happened to Spirit. And the one video you sent me, and the pictures of Spirit, I miss Spirit, and I never met Spirit.
Yeah. I
And
know it's really hard. It's really hard. And you brought up a really good point, Dan. Like, what are they doing on the day to day in there? Because here's the thing, and I don't know if I touched on this in the beginning, but this Saturday, they're sending 20 more dogs to another rescue that had their IRS nonprofit status revoked 2 years ago. So in the state of Washington. So how why do we think that's okay to send them there? 20 plus dogs, they had their nonprofit status revoked by the IRS. How what like there is no vetting, there's no checking, there's no nothing. And that's for the dogs. Dogs, they make a little bit more commotion when you take them out of somewhere because they're a little bit bigger. Cats you can put in carriers and throw in the back of a car and no one will ever question it.
Yeah.
So, like, it's like, going back to like the what happened in Florida, like, this guy has been flagged for issues with animal rescue. Now they're sending 20 dogs on Saturday, and I'm really tempted to go there because I want to see what dogs are being sent. Like, I really want to understand to some place that had their nonprofit status revoked. How does this make sense?
And
It's just crazy.
and you said the Florida person, they were paying him 3,000 a dog.
Yeah.
So how much less would it be to market those dogs and help find them homes? I would
Right.
imagine it would be a lot more cost effective to have somebody work with the dogs.
Yep.
And all I'd have to do is bring Sophie. These dogs would be well behaved in 5 minutes, because for some
Yeah.
reason, they're all terrified of my 14-year-old, 15-pound soccer ball looking cat. But
Yeah.
but if they're paying shady people 3,000, get them out of state, before sunrise. It would probably cost half as much to train, properly market, post on all the moms groups on social media,
Right.
and
Right.
and these dogs would find homes in no time.
Yeah. It's all about social media and they just don't take the time to properly do it. Like they need to, and kept saying this, you need to have someone who's designated for lost and found. Like it people just aren't doing their jobs right. And it's like I work in one of the largest marketing agencies. I think last time we spoke I was working in men's fashion in marketing, but now I've swapped over to a huge marketing agency. So all I go through all day is like briefs and how to properly have a business and this and that. And like they want to think about this shelter as a business. Fine, let's look at it like a business, right? They don't care about the animals. Fine. You want to think about it a bit like a business? Let's do that. Okay, you are sending dogs for more money somewhere, and you're going to continuously keep doing this, which it all adds up quite quickly. So you're burning taxpayers' dollars, sending them to random places when you can easily pay, for an on-site dog trainer for what, 100,000, 85,000, whatever it may be per year to be there and work with these dogs. Bring someone on, even if it's a student, to run the social media, run the lost and found. Like if you want to talk about like a business, then why are you running it so poorly? It's just all bad, and they don't understand, and honestly, they think that it's under control there, and I didn't when I first met the board, that first time I spoke and I had News 12 there, I didn't think anything. I was like, "You know what? They just really might not know what's going on in that shelter."
Yeah.
Everyone's busy, they sit
Right.
high level, like, I gave them the benefit of the doubt. There's an amazing person, and I think she's someone that everyone should friend on Facebook and talk to. Her name is Diane Madden.
Yes.
She knows so much about what goes on in that shelter, and she has the board's ear because they know she's right, yet they ignore her. And then these problems keep happening, and they reach out to her like, "How do we fix this?" She gives them the answer, and they ignore her again. So she's incredible because she's given me so much advice on like, this is what you should do, this is how you should approach it. Like, she's really been such a guardian angel for me. But I just watch them ignore her, and I'm like, you should bring her into this shelter. This acting supervisor, she's garbage. If I don't do my job right, I get fired. I get laid off. Or I get sat down and I say, "Tate, you better do this right or you're out." Why has no one done this with this woman? We should all be responsible for doing our job, no matter what. And my job doesn't involve animals. You can bet me $1 million. If my job involved animals, I would work 24 hours a day. This woman is sleeping knowing that this is going on sweetly at night. I mean, how? I don't get it.
They just don't seem to have a passion for the animals. I think it's just a paycheck.
Right.
It just smells like an episode of The Sopranos, and I like that show. It just smells like corruption and backroom backroom dealings to just, if 4.5 million is going to anything but the actual animals that are at the shelter,
Right.
you just have to question it.
Tate,
It
do
just
you have
it's
any idea how many times a year they have people like this guy from Washington come in to pick up animals like that? Any
I don't
idea?
know. I don't know. That's a great question. I think it's kinda, and I could be wrong, but I think it's relatively new to this year because 'cause
Okay.
they've had the 3 dogs taken to Florida, and now they have the 20 dogs leaving on Saturday.
Because
I I
if
don't
they're
I don't
paying
know.
that guy the same 3 grand a dog, that's a
Yeah.
salary.
Oh, yeah.
That is
Oh,
a
yeah.
full-time salary. So if they do this more than twice a year,
Yeah.
that's, I mean,
That's the thing.
it's just absurd. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
there
Yep.
are so many rescues on Long Island itself that are strapped for money, many of which we've had on the show, that are all volunteer, that are strapped for money, that go 24/7 and are so dedicated to finding cats and, yes, dogs too, homes, and who have people that transport for free, and that all they think about are the well-being of these cats. And then there's this big shelter, and I was there when I picked up Penelope. It definitely didn't give me the warm and fuzzies.
Yeah.
It gave me the institution hospital vibe when I was there. I didn't get these people care for their animals at all.
Yeah.
It sounds like, I was gonna ask, where do you see this going, but I think we've answered that question. I don't
Yeah.
feel like, other than call call a lawyer, I don't see this ever changing, and I think that's the saddest part.
do you
Yeah.
have any idea, Tate, if like how the other townships across the island handle theirs? Because obviously, I live out in Central Islip, so I'm a different township. I'm a town of Islip out here. So, and I've only been to their shelter one time just to kind of peek in at some cats. But
Yeah.
I mean, is this like something that's widespread? That type of any idea?
So it's funny because I kind of did when I was looking at Town of Hempstead and seeing how many lost cats they've posted. Once I saw 0, I kinda asked myself the same
Excuse me.
question, like, "Is this just normal? Like, what's the deal with that?" So,
Mm.
I went to, the Town of Oyster Bay Animal Shelter Facebook page. Now, I can't speak on the actual shelter itself, but I can speak confidently on the Lost and Found page. They posted, since the same date range, over 75 lost cats
Yeah,
with collars.
I know the
The
Islip one
collars,
does
everything.
post. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do see
It's
posts from them. Right.
It's poor practice on the town of Hempstead's end. I don't think it's common for shelters because honestly, you look at the overarching, like, what is the purpose of a shelter? It's to reunite lost animals, right? And to hold them. and or the animals that are abandoned and don't have homes, get them adopted, and they're failing horribly at both. So it's a them problem. They don't have their stuff together, and you know, I was thinking to myself, like, does the board just not like animals? Like, is this just a group of people? Because there are these insane people out there that just don't like animals. They majority of them have pets. And it's
Interesting.
funny because a friend of mine, she was like, "You know what?" She's like, "There are certain types of people out there that have animals. They love their animals, but they could care less about the others." Right? Like for me, if I see a feral cat on the side of the road, I immediately like have a can in the back of my car and I crack it open because I'm like, "Oh man, the thing's starving." It's not mine, but I care for it. And in my opinion, the board just if they have animals, they like them, but they don't really care. And the shelter is the easiest place to have money, burn because the animals can't speak.
Right.
So it's the easiest place to funnel money to, who knows? Like who knows if there's a relationship, someone on the board or someone within the shelter knows this guy in Washington, right? And this is their deal, it's a friend, it's whatever. Like why would there not be a solid vetting process? To me, that would be the first thing you should do. Because
Yeah.
if it's an amazing place, which after hearing that their status was revoked, I can't imagine it is, but if it was, let's just say it was, and they go to check it out and it's absolutely beautiful, then they should send those dogs proudly. But sending a dog with a shock collar on into a car for what, 20 hours to Florida? The worst state for animals to be in? I mean, like, there's no animal safety laws there. It's horrible. Like, you're telling me that the staff can watch this happen? And I was speaking to, someone at the meeting and they were telling me, some of the volunteers are kind of delusional and they've been sold on this dream that, the animals that were here for 5 years, they were going to die here and they have a new home and they're off to a new beginning. You're telling me that those dogs are frolicking in a field under palm trees right now?
No.
I don't see it. With that shock collar on and the height into that freaking dog's head that it's drilled into, I can't imagine. Right now, I bet Wally's sitting in a dog crate, shoved under a counter somewhere.
Yeah.
They just relocated it. It's not a better life. They relocated him. And 20 dogs? 20 dogs Saturday. How is this okay? We're not doing our job. And if so, the shelter should have no funding. Don't take animals. If you can't do your job right, don't take animals. Or privatize it for someone who's going to actually make a difference.
And so the board is completely heads in the sand. What about like going over their heads? What about the town supervisor or whoever's responsible for their budget? What about
So
speaking
that would
to
be
the
Don Clavin.
that would be Don Clavin.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's you look at the overall situation and you think to yourself, the amount of people who have had the same thing that happened to Spirit happen to them with their dogs, because it's happened before many times. Why have they given up? Like I kept wondering, like, why did these people give up? I mean, that's your baby, right? But then looking at the teeth that you have to physically pull with these people. I mean, they're lucky that I'm just a relentless bitch. Honestly, my mom has said to me since the day I was born, she's like, "You are just as hard-headed as they come." Because I am, and it kills me in certain parts of my life. I get, super irritated about things that I shouldn't be, but for stuff like this, like I've told Diane Madden and Valerie Heffron, who's an amazing, other animal advocate, like I will not stop. I've said this from the beginning, I'm not gonna go away. I haven't spoken to Toast's family, but I think that they just kind of want to leave the grief behind because they haven't really been doing much, and that's okay. That's on them. But for me, I cannot sleep at night. And it's weird. Like, I really do believe in this, other world that hopefully our animals go to and can, live happily. And I hope my horse and my cats and my dogs that have passed away are all there together. But you know, I still really have a very hard time with this. And I think it's because I look in the driveway every day from my bedroom of where he was picked up and I kind of relive it. So that makes it harder, but I
Yeah.
also just think about, what's to come and what's going to happen to these other animals if I don't speak up on it or I don't do anything. And I'm not trying to be friends with the board. I don't want to be their friends. I don't want to hang out. I don't want to talk to them. I only want change. And I even put that in my email, like, I don't wanna keep talking about this. I can't imagine they like seeing my face at these meetings, like, let's just sit down together. Unless you want to keep doing this in a public setting, like I'll get every news outlet I can there to cover this story. Like it's it's just seems like there's no answer here, and I have spoken to lawyers, and we do kind of have something mocked up on the back, if we do want to go forward with this suit. But also, we've been super patient. How many people that have gone through this wouldn't have jumped on the lawsuit immediately? I gave them time.
Right, right.
They had time. I thought I was doing the right thing, but it's feeling like a dead end.
You have done the right thing, and there are many positive adjectives to describe you. Bitch would never be one of them, in our opinion. I get what you're saying, but that is definitely not the vibe that you give across. You
I appreciate it.
you know, sue them, run for office, make the change. It sounds like to me those are the only two ways to, or we all as a podcast staff, and you're like an honorary staff member, Tate.
Oh.
With whether you like it or not, we're gonna have you on every 6 months.
Oh.
We run for the board somehow and just force the change. It sounds like the only way those are the only options. It just sounds like it'll never change. There will be other toasts and other spirits, unfortunately, because they just don't care.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they want their, I see the meme on Facebook of how much the ASPCA director makes. How much money all these organization heads are making, and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Well, Tate, I was hoping for, they all showed up at your door begging forgiveness, which is what should be happening. But
Yeah.
again, the spirit lucked out when he got you as a mom and an owner, because I cannot think of a more dedicated, more driven. All I do is do a podcast and volunteer for rescues, and I get discouraged. I cannot imagine. And Michelle has to talk me down. When I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, and Michelle's like, no, don't do that. We have other people to talk to. We have stories to tell. And I'm like, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
But that's nothing compared to what you just said, where you look out in the driveway every day, because Spirit was the town mayor.
Yeah. Yeah.
The stories you told me, how he'd kind of wander around. He was a beach bum, and
Yeah.
he had his little beret on, and
Yeah.
and what
Literally.
it also, because as of the tight knit community you are, everybody's like, Spirit, how are you? Kind of like
Oh my
Norm,
God, yeah.
like Norm from Cheers, and he's just walking around, having his
Yeah.
having his coffee, and just what an awesome, carefree cat he was.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine, and we've all lost cats. I've had to go through that pain many times.
Yep.
Michelle, I'm sure you have as well.
Absolutely.
You've lost other. I didn't know you had a horse, Tate.
Yeah.
That if we start a horse podcast, we'll talk about your horse.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had every animal in the book, and that's just who I am. Like I got a call 2 nights ago about someone who the mom ran away, and the kittens were 3 hours old, and they, had been watching them, and the mom didn't come back. Like I'm engulfed in the rescue community, and that's I think also, important too, is like that people just stay involved as much as they can, because you assume that people always have the animal's best interests, and it's really sad because you see that they don't, or right now I'm doing this podcast right now in my office at work in the city, because I have a job to do, and I'm not done with it. And for the acting director, she should be at that shelter until 12 o'clock every night. You know what? She has a job to do, and it's obviously not getting done. We all are responsible for ourselves, make sure our job is done. She's not. Those people walk out at 5, regardless of what the heck happens. They don't care. I've seen those doors close at 5 o'clock. There's a stop to their day. You know what? My day, I'm not curing cancer. There's not animals' lives at stake, but I'm here, and I'll keep working after this. Them,
Well,
they leave at 5.
I didn't realize you were still at work. Can you thank our boss, your boss, for us?
I'm the only one in the Chrysler building right now, I swear. It's perfect. I got my own little executive office for this podcast. I feel very official.
Oh,
It's
very
good.
nice.
You're recording from the Chrysler building?
I am. I'm in the Chrysler
Wow.
building. Yeah,
Live
that's
from
where
the
I am.
Chrysler building.
Live from the Chrysler. Pretty
I'm,
iconic.
I'm getting Z100 vibes. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Is this the first time, Michelle, we've had anybody from the Chrysler building? That's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
it definitely
That's
is.
That's pretty.
awesome.
There you go.
I feel pretty fancy right now. Cool.
I'm honored. But like that, my whole point is that their day stops at 5 o'clock, and there's lives on the line, and that's such a problem. I mean, I don't know how they're getting a paycheck every week as if everything is running smoothly, but it's not. And for me, I've said this time and time again, and I'll keep saying it. I'm not getting paid to fight with them. I'm actually wasting money by paying for a train ticket to go to Hempstead every 2 weeks now and go to the stupid meeting. I'm doing it because I know it's the right thing to do, and I know that in my heart I was hoping that people in that shelter were spies and could give me ears and eyes on what's going on, but a few of my friends that were volunteers there, they don't volunteer there anymore because they don't want to see it.
Right.
So I don't really have any eyes there, and I have to keep fighting on this, and I won't stop. And the frustrating thing is that I thought I got them at a very vulnerable point because a lot of them were up for re-election last year, and unfortunately, the ones that were up for re-election got re-voted in for at least 2 years. So now it's like I have to work with them because they're stuck here. So I think they're feeling very comfortable where they're at. I think they're feeling like they can brush off the public, but I'm not going to let that happen.
And suing them will hit them where it hurts.
I hope so.
And it sounds like if all they care about is a paycheck, then hit them where it hurts.
Right.
Again, we're not lawyers. I'm glad you're consulting with one, but it's just a frustrating thing. But I know I appreciate the fight. I know you won't give up. I'm hoping when we have you on again in 6 months that we'll have some sort of update that is positive, because the toasts, the spirits, the Wallies of the world the animals just deserve better.
Yeah.
So Tate, thank you so much for speaking to us from the Chrysler building.
Thank you guys. I know, it's kind of funny. I forgot I was in here for a second. I looked out the window and I'm like, oh my gosh.
I've never been in the Chrysler building. Is it nice? Is it cool?
You've never been in the Chrysler building? It's
cool
beautiful.
I'm not a tourist. I haven't been in Manhattan since 2020 at all.
Oh man.
Well, the building was built a long time before 2020, Dan.
I know, but when I go, I don't do the touristy things. I'm usually looking for a bathroom or a drink.
Yeah.
Well, you're going places. I still feel like there's a political future for you, but first things
I thought
first.
about it. Yep.
First
it's on the
things
radar.
First, for sure. Tate, thank you so much. Please continue the fight. We'll have you on again in another 6 months.
Yeah, thank you. It was very nice to meet you.
Yes, it was nice meeting you too, Michelle.
Yeah.
Hopefully I have better updates for you guys next time. We'll definitely stay in touch on this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and keep up the fight.
All right. Thank you both.
Thanks. Take care, Tate.
Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.